Hello, and a very good evening to all of you watching this fifth annual empowerment retreat. Today is the 25th of November, 2023, and we are nearly done today. And I'm really honored to be here with Chris Gladwell, Caldwell, otherwise known as Kita. And a little bit about Chris. So, Chris is a dear friend, and he has a wide range of life experiences, including faith and mentorship, entrepreneurship, a great deal of businesses and ventures he's been involved in, including his own retreat center in California, and most importantly, around the Africa, the Diaspora Reunited, a digital platform centered around the unity amongst the African diaspora. He's also was a minister for 18 years and has recently evacuated the US, emigrated, to South Africa. And so we're really delighted and honored to have Chris here. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us today. I wanted to go here. There we go. During this session, we wanted to speak about ancestry and begin with what it means to be an ancestor, or what do we mean when we talk about our ancestors. And I've come across this ideal that we can be the ancestor that we seek. So be the ancestor that you seek. So you're looking for that ancestor, you're referring back to ancestors, and we do that quite often. We refer back to, there's one t-shirt that says, and a phrase, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. So what I want to do is I want to dive into and look into what that might mean for us when we refer to our ancestors as being our wildest dreams. So we're going to look at this as an interactive journey that explores what it means to be what I call a living ancestor. So in this general meeting space, we'll have the opportunity to share as we move along the evening. We will create a shared tapestry of heritage to comfort ourselves in this space of cultural calm. I wanted to start off with a music interlude. It's by Sona Jaborath. She is of Mandi from the Gambia. She is a rare female griot of a long line of kora-playing griots. Griots in the African tradition hold and tell the stories of our community. So with Sona, we're going to start off this song. It's in Mandika, her native tongue, and it speaks of her mother, honors her mother, and this is the phrase Mama Muso. So listen in.
Mama, mama,
Thank you for listening to that with me. That the instrument that you hear is the kora, and it is a unique African instrument. And when I was going through my naming ceremony, and that's where the name Keita came from, I also have kora as a part of that naming. And the using the word kora for me is a representation of how much music plays in my family's life. Our family, it's like a musical tapestry, really, with all the members of our family. We turn on music when we wake up, it goes throughout the day, and it puts us to sleep as well. It reminds me of the times that mom sang to me her lullabies and my grandmother sang to me the lullabies. And that is what the kora instrument was used for. It was used to tell the story of families. And so that's Sona, and she is one of the few women kora players. The instrumentation of playing music and telling stories in the griot is typically a male line only, but she comes from a family of griots, and the father had a daughter. So that's how she ended up taking up the mantle of being a griot. An ancestor is any person from whom you are descended physically, emotionally, and relationally. Your great grandparents are your ancestors, and their parents are too, and their parents. And for those of whom we have a close relationship, and that would be our chosen family, people that are very, very close to us. That's why I mentioned just not a descendant physical ancestor, but people who that we are emotionally attached to, people that we have a relational attachment to. These are people who are our ancestors. So the feeling of being an ancestor is one that is times past. So we are descended from someone. And in our communities, people of color, finding out who we are descended from is very difficult at times, knowing just who we came from. So when we speak of ancestors, for us, it could also be a void. We just don't know who those ancestors are. There's not a real connection when we mention ancestors. So it becomes more of a just a philosophical thing or an ideal that we have an ancestor. And typically, we're not knowing how far we go back, who we can claim as an ancestor. So that's why I've come up with this term, living ancestor, is the realization that you too, that we will also be one day considered ancestors. So with that in mind, we can be the ancestor that we seek. When we're thinking about an ancestor, we're thinking about drawing from them. We're thinking about um, understanding the feelings that they may have had in times past and how we can connect to that. So, as living ancestors, it's the mindset that, someone, somewhere, sometime will be looking back towards me. They won't know who I am. They may only know me on a record that they found, that they may not know all the information about me either. So Keita is a new name for me. Keita Kora Fulbe is a new name for me. So they're not going to necessarily find that name written anywhere, really, but it means a lot to me. So as a living ancestor, I can begin to be mindful of my current present here and how I can bring forth that ancestry in to future generations, to current and future generations. I have a sound clip. This is a reading that I did. It is from a poem by Devora Major. And listen to this. with open arms. I embrace you, love, though I have at times hidden from your touch, because I thought you smothered me, required that I be the air for others to breathe, the water for others to drink. I embrace you, love, though I have at times denied your advances, knowing that for me to accept your gifts, I must offer those of my own. I embrace you, love, having known you as ladder and crush, when I wanted to dance, to walk, to sit in stillness. I embrace the dreams you send me, and the tears that spill in moments when you crack open my heart to remind me how full it is of starshine and silk. I embrace you, love, who will not catch me when I fall, but instead advises me to swim in your surging waters. I embrace you, love, though you know no forgetting and insist I continue to feed on your fruits of forever, ever more powerful. You make me claim you as intimate companion. I believe that when we are thinking
To keep the channel going, please like.
When we're thinking about ancestry, we're thinking about there's like for me in a relational component to where I'm trying to get in touch with the essence of the ideal of ancestry of an ancestor. And I believe that what that is doing for me is looking for love. I want to embrace love. I want to find out what it is that caused them to have, our ancestors to have so much resilience. And that's what that poem was about. It was embracing love, even though it's hard to hold on to love, even though it requires a lot of patience. But if we embrace love during this transition and understanding of what it means to be a living ancestor, it's another coin and term that I'm thinking about, and that is breathing life into our cultures, breathing life into our culture by remembrance and recollection. So during this time, this is kind of where we can interact with one another. So I want to provide this space where we can give honor to our heritage and our cultural distinctiveness. So this is the question: who was it and what was passed on to you that you can pass on to others? So if you can name someone who is an ancestor that they imparted something to you, and if at times you believe you've begun to impart that onto others as well. So I will start. I will name an ancestor, the person who it was, and this ancestor would be actually my grandmothers. So my grandmothers on my father and my mom's side. One of my grandmothers imparted patience to me. She's very patient. There was a lot of grandkids running around the house all the time, but she imparted that patience to me. I could see her name. Her name is, see her now. Her name is Mary. And I know a little bit more about her life in her passing because I've done some ancestry work on her, finding out just how she grew up as a woman. Mary herself, she was born in 1920s. So her mother was the daughter of a slave. And what happened was, one of the stories of my grandmother is they didn't finish the school year term. They lived in Texas. And what they had to do is they had to drop out of school before it ended so they can go back into the area of her grandmother where they used to pick cotton. So there was a cotton season in Texas, and it ran into school, so they had to drop out of school in order to pick that cotton. That's one of the stories that I got from one of the grandmothers. The other grandmother on my father's side is a very resilient woman. She's strong, strong and tough. And her name was Edna. So she had multiple children as well as as Mary did. And she just lived a very tough life. She went through relationships as a woman that caused her divorce 2 times, and then lived the rest of her life without being married as well. So from this grandmother, I got strength. Being able to see how she raised children on her own, being able to see how the children came out as well as they could. So from this grandmother, I got strength. How I'm imparting that is definitely patience. Patience with my own son, my own relatives and friends. And the strength is for me to just continue on with the things that I think that I might want to do, that other people in my family may not be doing, people that I know. One of the biggest things for me is travel. So I'm the travel person in the family. I've traveled to over 40 countries, and now I've lived in one, and none of my family's been to Africa except for one. A niece, she just went just this year. So between her and I, we're the only members that have gone to the continent of Africa. So as you've had a chance just to kind of think about that, is anyone would like to share for themselves just to give honor and heritage culture?
I'll share. Honor to my father, Martin Sorrento. He passed when I was 21 years old. And what I learned from him and through his example was a love, being a loving being, really, being able to give, and the capacity to give love to anybody, someone begging on the street, right up to the president of where we lived in Dominica. He didn't have those biases, and that penetrated in my spirit from a young child growing up back home. And that's how I try to live my life, in terms of taking on that mantle and being free from bias and being able to give the best of myself to others, regardless of those divisions or perceived divisions. And my grandmother on my mother's side, she was a matriarch. Children are always there, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the big house. And we just listen to her stories and her laughter and have hot cocoa tea. And I always try to reenact that and create that in my house when my family comes home. Cocoa tea is a big deal. That just signifies that comfort, and something that I want to kind of continue to, almost like a ritual, really, to remember her. Thank you.
You can also think about some of the other tangible things too, and honoring your heritage and your culture. So maybe someone could share something about a food that they really love that's been passed down from generation to generation. For me, it's hot water cornbread. I don't see that often anywhere, but it's hot water cornbread. And I learned that staying in Africa the last 7 months, there is a dumpling that they prepare that's boiled in hot water. And for us, it's corn, it's boiled in hot water. And what we do is that for hot water cornbread, we take the same ingredients, the same way of making the the bread that's made in Africa, it's in a dough, it's a dumpling. We do the same thing, except we mash it down and then we fry it in oil. So it becomes, that's the hot water mixture. It's hot water cornbread. And I've been sharing that in South Africa, and they'd never known that before. And so I cooked hot water cornbread for them, and they cooked the dumplings for me. And we were able to bridge the gap between those of us who were on the continent 6 generations, 7 generations ago, and how the food carried on, even though we had left that land. So is there something else, something that you would share in that light of food or music or any kind of relationship that's remembered and recollected?
I'll share. A number of things were going through my mind with all of that. I just wanted to check with you. The griot, is her name Sona Jobarte?
Yes.
Thank you. I thought I recognized that. Well, speaking of the Kora, so very much a part of the inner landscape for me when I first heard it as a child, because I grew up in Nigeria and also in Sierra Leone. And Kora music was definitely something that I listened to, not consciously, it was in the background. But as I grew older, and as an adult, and because we moved around a lot, it took on, certainly as an adult, it's taken on an inner resonance, a spiritual significance for me that is very powerful. It transports me, and it bridges many things. We traveled a lot. We lived in Nigeria, we lived in Sierra Leone, we lived in Ethiopia, we lived in Kenya, and the things that made me West African, because that's the other thing. Africa is so various, and the cultures have a resonance, but they are not the same, language, etc. So things like Kora music, and one food I can name is jollof rice, which is so. But I was fascinated to find out that in East Africa they also make jollof rice. It's just, and I've learned that really as a much older woman now, with a Kenyan friend who said, "Oh yeah, we make that." I thought, really? Never saw it in Nairobi, but it's not Nairobi, it's Mombasa. So again, that's fascinating. So yeah, food. You're talking about dumplings. It made me think of something we call chin chin, which is the small dumplings that are fried, and also black-eyed beans made into a savory pudding with palm oil, and it's cooked in palm leaves. And I can still smell that with the shrimps. They sell it on the street. So in Lagos, yeah, those are the things.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And have you or anyone else, is there something that has been imparted onto you that you are currently passing on? This whole idea of living ancestor is looking back upon recollection of a person in our own life and them not understanding that the way they were living their life was to be one day known as an ancestor. I don't think my grandmother was just sitting there thinking, what, I just can't wait to become an ancestor, so I can be lauded and heralded, So, but yet that's what was happening. And I think this whole ideal and of reaching back to the ancestors, nothing new. It's in our cultural traditions, it's very, very strong. But this whole idea of taking that responsibility while we're living and saying, you know what, I can live my life in such a way internally so that what comes out of me externally is going to be passed on and carried on to the current generation and then their generations, because then they're also learning the importance of their life and the significance that it has for the next generation. This is what we're going to be getting into a little bit later in tonight. And that is our responsibility and how we can not only see ourselves as living ancestors, but how that everyone else around us, all of us in this room, can be honored as ancestors, knowing that we have a responsibility, that we have this opportunity to be responsible for carrying on the traditions of our culture. So the question is, how are you, or how are you carrying that on to the people around you?
I'd like to just comment quickly on that before anyone else would like to say something. It's just the way because my parents moved around, we did not actually have a particular link with many ancestors going back. We had some, but it was of a limited duration. However, I think there is something, certainly when I think about my father's line and I think about my brother, I think about my father, I think about my brother, and I think about some of the cousins and uncles that I met on my father's side, was a tremendous capacity to, I want to say laugh, which is interesting. They had very strong capacity to make others laugh, to make the community laugh. And it was through wit. It was through storytelling and wit, really sharp wit, not necessarily cutting, but always very, very funny. And that had the capacity to change a mood, to break up resistance. And I think that's something that I see in my brother and appreciate in my brother very much. And my mother is, for me, a really, really important ancestor, because she held the power of love when things were not going well. And she extended that love to others. She was not an extrovert, but for the sake of other people, she put herself out there. And I think that that's something. I am an extrovert. I don't particularly retreat, but she had courage, and she had courage, and she had love, and she had kindness. And I think those are the things that I'm cultivating in myself as best I can to take forward. You said something about love. It's not always cozy or my mum's love for us was very warm, but she also could be very strong and clear about what she was doing and why she was doing it. And yeah, I think that's important. Thank you.
It's something I pass on to my grandchildren and my daughter and communities, the pouring of libation, which I pour daily to our ancestors and also our honored ancestors. What in my tradition we call Shepsu, because they were examples of living our culture and traditions, and kept those alive for us. So it's something that whenever my grandchildren are here or my family come together, I encourage them to pour, and they don't have to get all the words right. It's just that they understand that there are some unseen and some living ancestors. that they can call on and get strength from. Yeah.
I like that when you mentioned call on and get strength from. The 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 foundation of tonight's expression about ancestry and about being a living ancestor is just that. And we'll get into a little bit more about a little bit more as we go down through it. The thought that I'm having is that when we as a community begin to grab on to what it means, what an ancestor past has meant, and then how we can see ourselves as that living ancestor now, I think, at least for me, what I'm doing, I carry myself differently. There's more of a foreseeable future. In other words, I know that I can live on, even though I pass and I'll be considered an ancestor. But there's something about accepting that responsibility now that allows me to have a little bit more assurance of my presence when I walk into the room of family. That even though I might not be recognized in the way that we recognize the quote ancestors, that when I begin to bring that ideal in my own heart and mind, hopefully that will draw the current generations to want to know more about who I am, where I've come from, and how that might affect their lives. I sure know that that's what happened with my grandmothers, that when they walked into a room, you just, for me, I just felt I just needed to sit at their feet, you know. I do that with my mother now. She's 81 years old tomorrow, and I feel the same way. I just want to sit and give them, her, an opportunity to say what needs to be said. So, with I want to move on to another sound interlude, but before I do, I wanted to give anyone a chance to pick up that thought.
Sorry, Kate, the two people just joined us. Would you mind just repeating what you shared? What the task is? Well,
Yes, thank you for joining us. We're looking at what it means to be an ancestor, and then more importantly, what it means to be a living ancestor, and how we can carry on those traditions into the next generation. So that's what we're going through, an exercise of honoring people in our family, past and present.
I remember my grandmother.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so she's my living ancestor and my inspiration actually. And in some ways, I'm only just recognizing that now as we speak. But she had this power to do. She would host retreats. She was Catholic. She had a lot of energy and a lot of pulling power, and was always doing this rosary. And there was a time in my life when I became really depressed, and I really outgrew Catholicism for various reasons. But for some reason, I was just remember these beads, in her hand, and this devotion that she had. And being my grandmother being also part African, I think there was also an inherent intuition um, in what she did. Um, there was, I don't know, more soul in it, or there was an extra dimension. So, for example, she was quite intuitive, almost psychic in some respects, through her dreams and through all sorts of ways that she would just, I mean, like when she would walk into the room, everyone would stop, everyone would freeze. She had this presence. She would just, everyone would just, It was like, but no one else in the family could do that. Only she could do. No one else in the family actually ever has done that. So there is something, isn't inherent in there's a mysticism sometimes when something's oppressed, and I think I can see some of that energy actually being passed on to me, and I guess I've passed that down in maybe some of the work that I do, working intuitively. So I've really enjoyed your inquiry questions because it made me really think, okay, who is it? Who's the ancestor really that's actually influenced me the most? And it is my grandmother. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing that as well. And Elaine?
Yeah, the people, it's a difficult one. The people that I have connection with are my grandfather, who's passed, Nigerian, and a brother that I never, an uncle that I never met, his son. That's the connection. And my mother, who is also passed, they're the Okoros. The link and the connection I have with them, because I needed to look back, is that my uncle used to pay for Manchester United, and before he went off to sea, he was signed up, but he never returned. And they honour him now at Manchester United when it's the Remembrance Day. So they're the people that I've got a strong connection with. My living ancestor would be my father, who's Jamaican, and what he brings is his layback attitude and his food and his sense of humour. He always likes to give all the children the first taste of like hot pepper sauce, just to see their reaction, just a little tiny taste, and it's just that wicked kind of sense of humor that he has. So that would be, I would capture that.
Thank you. My father did the same thing. My father did. He would want to, because all the grandkids and all the kids would just be around him. And as far as he was concerned, you know what, you just leave me alone. That was his phrase. Would you guys just leave me alone? And so then he said, okay, here, you want to taste it? All right, and be, I told you.
And I just wanted to add as well, how I pass things on as well is because looking back, the information that I've got, I pass on to other family members, the next generation, about the things that I've learned, and share that with them from the Okora side. So from my father's side, I don't know as much. I suppose because I'm talking with him. Yeah, I think there are two sets of families, so it's connecting them all together. So it can be quite complicated.
Peter, did you have something?
Oh, me, not at the moment, thank you. But I probably will. I probably will. Thanks.
Okay, great. Just didn't want to leave you out.
Thanks. Thank you.
I have another music interlude, as you can tell. Again, music is a big part of my family, and it almost just drives and moves everything. So I'll show you. Well, actually, you can listen to this. Before I start to play it, I'm going to give you just a phrase out of the song to keep in mind as you're thinking through this. Our life is the seed of children who may never know our name. Our life is the seed of children who may never know our name.
We are the love of strangers that say a silent prayer. We are the love of mothers that taught our hearts to care. We are the patience in the sacrifice of yesterday. The silence in between the breaths of all the words we say. We are. We are the proof of life our ancestors gave. We are the proof of love from the cradle to the grave. We are the best of struggles that we won't have to bear. We are the heir to all the prayers that float upon the air. We are. We are the seed of children that may never know our names. We are the piece of people that won't bow their heads in shame. We are. We walk upon the earth, we knock on heaven's door. We are the life that teems along the deepest ocean floor. We are. The present, the past, the future days to come. The Alpha, the Omega, we are everything, the one. We are. We are.
How did that sit with you all?
Beautiful.
Amazing. That was just absolutely amazing.
We are. Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's made me think a lot as well, like, yeah, it took me back and made me think deep. Very beautiful.
We
It
have a
brings
copy of that. Do you have the link?
Yeah, I'll put that in the chat, and I also have the lyrics I can put in the chat too.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So we are, and we are, what was that phrase? We are the seed of children. Our life is the seed of children who may never know our name. This is this opportunity we have to embrace ourselves as living ancestors, to raise and elevate our own selfhood, that we have a responsibility and that we can take that opportunity to be the ancestor that we seek. We're looking for strength from ancestors, and we can be that strength for the present generation they don't have to wait until we die to decide to try to find out who we were. With that idea and with the understanding that we are, the intention is to heal ancestral wounds. So this is a little bit deeper here. And as a part of that, we can learn to breathe love. We can learn to breathe love into the lingering traumas of the past and the difficulties of the present, all the while signaling a release as we understand ourselves as living ancestors. And what that means is in breathing love into that is taking the time to understand, or I should say, taking the time to recognize your own living ancestry, where we need to take care of ourselves. We need to embrace love within ourselves so that we can walk into that room and be that person where our family members around us, and remember, family member is physical descendants. There are people that we're emotionally tied to. There are people that we have strong relationships, people that we call auntie, uncle, mama, papa, that may not even be those people on the bloodline side. So that we can then learn to breathe love into ourselves and then to pass that on in honoring those people who are still alive, like my mother. You know, I walk into her bedroom, and at this point, you know, she's up there, she's up in age, and she's cognizant, she's doing all her thing, but you know, it's my mom. It's a person whom at one point was my age. You know, she's 20 years or so older than I am now, but you know, she used to be my age too. And there was such a struggle in life and for people of color that we may not have recognized what our part was going to be. I guarantee you, she does not recognize that she's an ancestor. I don't think she's ready to be an ancestor yet in the traditional sense of the word. You know, she's still alive and kicking. You know, I don't want to be an ancestor, you know, but a living ancestor is different. It's because those who are living are looking back to find strength from the ancestors. Well, that strength is laying in the bed right now. That strength is barely moving around and getting around. So before we get to a place to where becoming an ancestor has no meaning to us because we're just trying to survive the morning, that at in our strength and our health, that we can stand tall and walk within that ancestry now. And as a result of that, breathe love into the pain of, I can do that. I can breathe love into the pain of my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather, the difficulties that they had. I have another interlude I'd like to play for you. Oops. Just a sec. I'll have to pull it up. Oh. I definitely want to find that. So while I'm looking for that, I will give us this one again, just to repeat.
We are the love of strangers that say a silent prayer. We are the love of mothers that taught our hearts to care. We are, we are, we are the patience in the sacrifice of yesterday. The silence in between the breaths of all the words we say. We are, we are. We are the proof of life our ancestors gave. We are the proof of love from the cradle to the grave. We are, we are. We are the best of struggles that we won't have to bear. We are the heir to all the prayers that float upon the air. We are, we are, we are. We are the seed of children that may never know our names. We are the piece of people that won't bow their heads in shame. We are, we are. We walk upon the earth, we knock on heaven's door. We are the life that teems along the deepest ocean floor. We are, we are, we are. The present, the past, the future days to come. The Alpha, the Omega, we are everything, the one. We are, we are. Ooh, we are.
That was good. Very touching. This next interlude is from a friend of mine that started a men's group during COVID. It was a black men of color group. And this is some of the things and ideas that I presented to the group at that time. And this is his testimony.
So my name is G'day. I'm a husband, father, community member. And then at the end of it, I'm a LMFT, so a licensed marriage family therapist. And before all that, y'all probably can't tell, but I'm actually East African. I was born and spent about 5 years of my life in Ethiopia. My mom and I actually have a very, very special journey. And in brief, what that is that we were refugees, left from Ethiopia into the country west of us called Sudan because there was a war and famine, spent a bit of time in a refugee camp. My mother then met my father, and between 1982 and about 1985, my siblings and I, I have 6 siblings total, 2 that were born in Ethiopia and within the refugee camps, decided that the best situation for us was to leave. So we were, in about 85, granted refugee status and literally sent over to Chicago. Spent a good chunk of my life on the north side of Chicago, so I definitely have love for the city. And from there, my parents migrated to Fresno, give or take late 80s into the 90s. And I've spent a good part of my teenage and adult life in Fresno. A lot of folks are like curious about why Fresno. And, you know, I come from a community where we are rural-based, agricultural-based. So essentially Fresno mirrored what I would have been raised in back home. Still have family in Ethiopia, so I definitely have ties to the country. And why this intro is important for me is because my style of therapy is informed by the life that I lived, the community that I was brought in, and really my success, my social success, my emotional success, my financial success. All of that is really tied to my community. So in the 90s, there was a huge Ethiopian community, and my house was what we like to call the Underground Railroad for East Africans in general, very specifically Ethiopians, because my mom is the cook in the family and the cook in the community. So as a community, we really, really talk about ideas, supports, resources at a table with dinner. So I grew up, you know, in a 3-bedroom house, and at any given point between my siblings and I, sharing rooms, there was always a room, a bed, a something available for our folks who were touching down and didn't quite understand the world that they were stepping into.
Does anyone have any similar experiences as well that you could share? My auntie was that of his mother. And in the city that she lived in, it was the same way. There was a nice porch. The grass was not, it was a dirt lawn. That was the lawn. It was a dirty lawn. And all the grandkids and the cousins would all be at her house. Her name was Bebe. We called her Aunt Bebe. And she would get up in the morning and start cooking. The food would be out by noon, and all the kids in the neighborhood, it's like a revolving door till midnight, just all coming through. They knew that that was the safe porch to come to. You could never sleep there, you know, you just learn to, you know, sleep amongst the noise, but it was comforting to be able to know that she was carrying on ancestral tradition. That's how her parents did it, and that's her mom did it, my grandmother, so on and so forth. So that's the memory that I have with that same kind of feeling as well. I want to bring us to a piece of this topic that it can be a little bit heavy. So I just want you to think about it a little bit, first of all. And that is there anything that you needed from an ancestor that you did not give, that you did not get? Is there something, someone, and just think about it in your mind. You don't have to share this, but what did you need from that ancestor, either past or current? And in thinking about that, is it possible for you to give voice and breathe love into that act, to breathe love into that lack? Is it possible to give voice to something that an ancestor could not give you, and yet the expectation was there and you did not receive it? Is it possible for you to give voice and breathe love into that lack? Thinking about that is because as a living ancestor, we too are going to fall short of other people's expectations. And as we think about giving love to those times that we did not receive, it can help us be more mindful of our relationship to those that we have relationship with, whether they be cousins, nieces, whomever, chosen family we've just been around for a long time. I'm thinking of some people right now that were called cousins, that there was no blood relationship. It's just my mom and dad had friends that they grew up together with in careers and things like that. They had children. My parents' friends had children. And for the longest, we all grew up beside each other thinking that we were blood related because of the love that was there. They were just cousins. So just think about that again, is there an ancestor, past or present, that did not give you what you expected, what you needed from them? And thinking about how we've looked back at some of the struggles and understanding the time period that they grew up in, that it might have been difficult for them to be able to give certain things to us at that time. The whole idea of this thought process is to think about you as a living ancestor, basically to forgive ourselves for what we're not going to be able to give others, but at the same time, breathing love into the lack that we had gives us a little bit more strength and courage to be that much more for ourselves, and to recognize that when we are in the presence of others, to be more patient, to be more of a listening ear, because we may have been trying to communicate to our ancestors past what we needed, but they weren't able to hear it. Knowing that as a living ancestor, perhaps now we can have an open ear more to listen to those little feet around us, to listen to young adults for whom their ancestors could not give them certain things, whether it be their parents or an uncle, or they were abused or anything like this, that we can be mindful of the love that we're breathing into our lack, so that we can be more available, so that, again, when we walk into that room, people can see, this individual is thinking more, is thinking more about the whole picture of things and not just the current thing that they're involved in right now. I want to give anyone any to speak up if they feel that kind of resonated with them.
Yeah, yes. And it's amazing because, of course, so I'm going to refer to my parents because they are the ancestors that I was most intimately connected with. And both of them have passed on 20 years ago. Within 6 months of each other, they were gone. And my dad was missing a lot of the time. He was missing in a particular way. He was missing in an emotionally relational way. And then we grew up without him after I was age 6. My parents lived in separate places and to all intents and purposes were separated. And having said that, they never really separated. And you know, it's been part of my life story about my dad. And in the past, in fact, since before he died, some years before he died, I was able to start to view him as a being, a person, not as my dad, but as who he was, what had shaped him. Not because I thought that it was okay, but because it was what was, you know, that was what happened. And I could start to make space for his story. And I still think that the effects lasted because, you know, I let go of that. I let go of a lot of things around my dad. And I had to provide or learn, I have discovered in the process of living my life and taking on who I am, the level of validation of you're great, all the things that never got said. And in doing so, I can see that at his very heart, that being wanted all of that for me. He wanted all of that for all of us. So I can let that go now. I can be that now. And I still struggle, but not as an issue to do with him or my parents particularly, but more like then discovering how can I be the more for me and of myself that I say I want? Who can I be in the matter of my own my own wholeness, that there's nothing missing, that it is that I'm always evolving and that I am perfect as it is. Perfect because I know nothing is perfect, but wow, we are also unique and essential. That's a perfection. So it's something that I stand in, and I allow that to be the space in which things unfold for me, and you know, and not get stuck in shame or guilt or littleness. There are certain things I'm little about, but hey, it's a work in progress. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Anubia. That really resonates with me as well. And that is the whole idea of what I call is breathing love and sending love to the trauma. So breathing love into the trauma and sending love to the trauma. It is at that point to where I'm able to more and more, because it is a progression of time, call out a person's name. And in my relationship with that person, the areas that lacked, to be able now to speak what I call speaking love into that area of my life, giving myself voice, because at the time things were happening, I had no voice. Like when you were 6 years old, I mean, you had no voice in that. But now, the practice of speaking love into that trauma, being the voice that you needed to hear then and doing that now. At the same time, what that does for me, it allows me to recognize that I too will have some lack when it comes to people's expectations of me as well. And it's the balancing of embracing love for myself and then having a close listening ear to the people around me, but knowing that, remember, one day they're going to call me an ancestor, and all of a sudden I'm going to be heralded and lauded and, you know, put on a pedestal somewhere, you know, and all of this ceremony will be around me once I'm gone. So it's the thought process of saying, you know what, I can be that now. I can be that living ancestor now. It makes me have to kind of want to be more Yoda-like, you know, more wisdom. I got this a heavy responsibility. It makes me want to bring up my niece and sit her down and, listen to what she has to say and then be there to impart, so that one day she's not thinking, oh, Uncle Keita, he was a really good guy, wasn't he? Was he a good guy? Where did he go? What did he do? I always knew he was traveling, but I didn't know anything about it. Well, I have that opportunity to share that now as a living ancestor. There's a quote I would share with you. We need more light about each other. Light creates understanding. Understanding creates love. Love creates patience. And patience creates unity. This is his whole idea of recognizing our current people who are close to that lauded ancestry, who will pass on soon. We need more light about each other. It's an opportunity for me to learn more about the people who are living, who are close, but who are still living. And then it allows me to look forward. Yes, I need more light about the young ones too. I need and knowing that that's going to create a better understanding, the more that their life's illuminated, the more my life's illuminated now in the present. And then knowing that that's going to create love, that understanding creates love, then love creates patience, and then patience creates unity. I have a final interlude. And while we're thinking about this, first of all, let me give you the definition of this word that you're going to hear. It's called, the word is birima, B-I-R-I-M-A, and it means a natural born leader. So let me go to that.
Said you love my truth, but I don't think you hear me. Time to share the fruit, cause you watered it with my blood. Say you want me, but only when I am easy. This one's for my father, and his father is about where we come from, not about what you run from. This one's for my father, and his father is about where we come from, not about what you run from. Whoa, bitty mom. You look so confused. to make you move your feet. These chains will rattle like a symphony. This one's for my father, and his father is about where we come from, not about what you run from.
Whoa, Bima. Umayendo, mayendo, fayendo, mane. Whoa, Bima. Umayendo, mayendo, fayendo, mane. Ang nausika, kuchinek kutukon, del pakobawan. Azizo may dugong, ang ngayon Whoa, Africa. I'm gonna give you all my love, yeah. Whoa, Africa. I'm gonna give you all my love. Whoa, Bima. Fumayendo, mayendo, fayendo, mane. Whoa, Bima. Fumayendo, mayendo, fayendo, mane. Africa.
The phrase that stood out to me, it's not what we run from, but it's where we come from. And historically, people of color are running from. And as a result of that, the time that we spend in our lives are not thinking too much of where we've come from. A lot of our organizations and groups are as a result of running from the oppression, running from the racism, running from. And ancestry focus on where we come from. And the coming from, as a living ancestor, that's very, very important, is that our current lives, I'll say, I don't know what generations we are, baby boomers or Generation X or Z or K or whatever, but whatever time frame you are from, that is your come from. That is my come from. My life is not validated from 7 generations ago. What we come from is our experience now, from the time frame that we're living right now. If you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, that is your come from. And as a living ancestor, we have the opportunity to let the current generation know how we got to be who we are, where we come from. It doesn't have to be a big gap from 3 grandpas and 3 grandmas and 3 great aunties back. We can breathe life into their experiences, embrace love, breathe love into their experiences, knowing that we are that living ancestor and our lives are significant, whether they were a part of our lives much at all or not. And they actually, you can go back, 2 great-great-grandparents. Most people don't even know their great-great-grandparent or never met them or know nothing about them. Definitely the 3rd grandparent back. It just seems so far away. But now, as a living ancestor, we can stop running from, and we can stand on where we come from. And I think that can be very transformative when it comes to the young people around us. I think they see us running from a lot of things, and they feel that, I don't know if I want to pick up that baton and keep running the next leg. I'd like to know a little bit about, what I'm saying is that them knowing a little bit about us, the things that we've shared, the music we've shared in this session, the food we've shared in this session, the examples, all of these things are the little tiny tidbits that will grow. Remember the phrase, we are the seed of children who may never know our name. So where we come from can be more important than what we run from. And I think, at least for me, it's time to stop running. It's time to stand ground and acknowledge my people, acknowledge acknowledge the lack, acknowledge all the great things they passed on to me as well. And I can also be that same thing for someone else before I'm 6 feet under. That's the whole
Exactly.
idea.
So
Before
true. So true, Keita.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's my part.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you, Chris Keita.
Thank you.
Yeah, my mother named me Chris, so I'm down with that name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are truly blessed.
Please
Beautiful.
unmute themselves and just
Yeah, let's share some love.
unmute
Let's share
themselves.
some energy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Peter.
The
Thank you
thing
very
about
much.
being a living ancestor is that it's not even necessarily, I mean, you've proved that here. Thank you. We're not necessarily your blood family, but we are spirit family. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Keep the
resonated with me this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
like especially the last part, like where you say that where we're coming from, like right now, because I've always been worried, or it's always bugged me that I don't know much about three generations back in my family, because we don't I don't think we know much about what happened. I mean, the greats, because some of them came as slaves from even Asia and certain parts of East Africa over down to Cape Town. So I don't know much about their background. And then I always made it a point that I want to make a name for myself here so that my descendants will always know me. But then when you mentioned the fact that what are we doing now for this generation, to be different. And I think I need to spend like more time with my children, because what I am now, where I'm coming from right now, is more important. And I'm really going to work on that, because my father was somebody that I think what I missed a lot. He's still alive, but he never ever told me that he loves me. It's only now we're older, when we finish speaking on the phone, we now might just say, I love you, goodbye. But it's not, we never grew up saying that to each other. It felt, awkward at first. But I really want to spend more time with my children, make them know I really love them, from young age. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Thanks for sharing. That was
Thank you
great.
so much, Peter, for that.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you for giving me so much to think about and to absorb. So if I haven't said very much, because I'm absorbing everything.
Well, I have plenty of time to think about this.